All right, let's dive in. Today, we're looking at Roman technology, but not as just a list of cool inventions. We're going to look at them as a series of brilliant solutions to some massive problems. We're not just talking about gadgets here. These were the systems that powered one of the biggest empires the world has ever seen. So, you got to ask yourself the big question the Romans faced. How do you possibly build and run a superpower, stretching from Britain all the way to Egypt, without any modern tech? No electricity, no engines, no internet. I mean, think about that for a second. The scale of that challenge? It's just mind-boggling. And just to give you a sense of that scale, look at this number, 50,000 miles. That's how many miles of stone-paved roads the Romans built. And no, that's not a typo. That's enough road to wrap around the entire planet twice. A project that massive would be a huge deal even today. So yeah, that kind of sets the stage for the kind of genius-level problem solvers we're dealing with here.
Okay, so first up, let's see how they solved the most fundamental problems of just keeping a giant city alive. We're talking about how they conquered two of the most basic things you need to build a civilization: water and, well, rock.
You know, for a mega city like ancient Rome, we're talking 1 million people all crammed together. Their biggest enemy, it wasn't some invading army. Nope, it was thirst. Just getting enough clean water into the city every single day was a constant life or death battle. And look, this water wasn't just for sipping. It fueled the legendary Roman baths. It flushed their surprisingly advanced sewer systems. I mean, this was the absolute lifeblood of the city. Without that constant, massive flow of fresh water, the whole Roman way of life just falls apart. So how'd they pull it off? Well, their solution is, honestly, it's beautiful in its simplicity. No complex machines, no pumps, no engines. They harness the most powerful force on Earth. And it's totally free: gravity. And here's the crazy part. Their engineers would figure out these tiny, tiny slopes over dozens of miles to keep the water moving just right. They'd carve tunnels straight through mountains, build these absolutely massive bridges. And some of them were so perfectly cut, they didn't even need mortar to hold them together. That's just insane precision. And the payoff? A ridiculous amount of water pouring into the city every single day. Okay, but to build all this stuff, you need a secret weapon, a game-changing material. And for the Romans, that was their concrete. By mixing lime with volcanic ash, they created a special mix that wasn't just super strong, it could actually harden underwater. Think about that. It was cheap, it was versatile, and it completely changed what was possible. So this magical concoction, right? It was a total game changer. Because now you're not just stacking blocks. You can pour this stuff into molds, and that means you can suddenly build bigger, crazier shapes. Curves, massive domes, stuff nobody had ever seen before. And that's how we get masterpieces like the Pantheon and, yeah, the one and only Colosseum. All right, so the cities are thriving, they've got water, but now you have a new problem. You've got this massive, sprawling empire. How do you actually connect it all? First thing you need to know, a Roman road was not just some dirt path. No, these things were engineered marvels. Think of them like a multi-layer cake, built to last. First, surveyors would find the absolute straightest route, no messing around. Then they dig a trench, fill it with a base of big stones, add layers of gravel and sand for drainage, and top it all off with tightly fitted paving stones. It's this insane level of detail that explains why you can literally still drive on some of them today, 2,000 years later. You've all heard the saying, all roads lead to Rome, right? Well, it wasn't just a cute phrase. For a long time, it was literally true. This incredible network was like the arteries and veins of the empire. It let armies move fast, it let goods and money flow, and it let Rome project its power to the farthest corners of its world. So if the roads were the hardware, what was the software running on them? It was called the cursus publicus, basically the world's first state-run postal service. And get this, using a relay system of fresh horses, an official message could travel from Britain all the way to Romania in about a week. That's lightning fast for the ancient world, and a huge strategic advantage. But you know, an empire isn't just held together by roads and bridges. There's this invisible infrastructure that's just as important. The next piece of Roman engineering we're going to look at is their legal system. See, the Romans were smart. They knew that if you want a massive, diverse empire to actually work, if you want trade to flourish between people who speak different languages and worship different gods, you need clear, predictable rules that everyone can rely on. Their legal system was just as brilliantly engineered as their aqueducts. And their system was seriously sophisticated. For simple things, they had real contracts, where you literally had to hand something over, like for a loan. But the real revolution was the consensual contract. This was a total game changer. All you needed was an agreement, a handshake deal, basically. You could make one from hundreds of miles away just by sending a letter. And that is what made massive, long-distance trade across the empire possible. So you've got laws for the marketplace, but let's be real. The empire was built and held by its army. And on the battlefield, the Romans had another surprising ace up their sleeve. Okay, pop quiz. Who do you think lived longer, on average? A regular citizen living in a Roman city, or a soldier out on the front lines fighting every day? The answer? The soldier. Yeah, I know, it sounds totally backward, right? But a soldier in the Roman army often lived longer than the average citizen back home. And it all comes down to one thing: their incredible medical system. The Roman army basically turned the battlefield into a high-stakes medical lab. They had professional field surgeons with specialized tools, things like arterial clamps and tourniquets to stop bleeding fast. They knew about sanitation, keeping their camps clean to prevent disease. They had these wild techniques for pulling arrows out without causing more damage, and medics who knew exactly which plants to use for which wounds. It was a whole system, and it gave their soldiers a huge survival advantage. Okay, so we've seen how they conquered water, roads, law, even medicine. So for this last part, let's connect the dots and see how their ancient blueprint is still all around us today. I mean, look at this. The parallels are just undeniable. Their layered roads, that's the basic design for our modern highways. Those gravity-fed aqueducts, they're the great-great-grandfathers of our city water systems. Those consensual contracts we talked about, that's the foundation of modern business law. And that battlefield medicine, it's the direct ancestor of the trauma care that saves lives in emergency rooms today. And that right there is the true genius of Rome. It was never about just one invention. It was their ability to build systems, to see how roads and laws and concrete and medicine all connected to solve problems on a scale nobody had ever even dreamed of before. And so that leaves us with one last question to chew on. The stuff the Romans built, their ideas, their systems, they were so good, we're still using the basic blueprint 2,000 years later. So you have to wonder, what about us? In 2,000 years, when people look back at our time, what incredible solutions will we be remembered for? What's our legacy going to be?